It is 3 minutes after 10 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we dive almost immediately into a truly horrible story. There's no other way of describing it, is there? We look, or I do at least, and you tease me sometimes about being naive, but I'd rather be naive than cynical, I think. I really do. I still have a childish or a childlike attitude towards the police, right? I mean, it's nowhere near what it was. Stories like Hillsborough, if nothing else, have obviously dented any notion of blind trust. But the way I was raised... My granddad was a copper, actually. I don't know if I've ever told you that, have I? Not when I knew him. He was long retired by that, but he was a copper during the war. And that's probably part of it as well, because there's a couple of pictures knocking around somewhere in Kidderminster of granddad in a an old-fashioned police uniform, looking very smart and very authoritative. And there's also the way that Mum would say to you, if you get lost, find a policeman. And I know this sounds a bit silly, but that's how most of us were raised, isn't it? It's going to depend partly on your age, I suspect. If you're in your 20s, you may think that this sounds a little bit Dixon of Dock Green. And of course, if like me, you're in your 50s, Dixon of Dock Green was the attitude that we used to describe the slightly rose-tinted approach of the older generation. So maybe there is a sort of curve here, and that every generation thinks that the good old days saw much warmer relations with the police. Because, of course, I mean, it's pretty easy to disabuse me of my rose-tinted perspective. My dad covered the West Midlands Serious Crime Squad, who were up to all sorts of horrors during the 1980s and beyond. I mean, police misconduct on epic scales, responsible for miscarriages of justice like the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford 4 and the aforementioned Hillsborough, people dying in custody, usually not white people, racist policing being absolutely part and parcel of the Metropolitan Police, up to and including the Macpherson report that found institutional racism being in place. So I speak very much from my own personal position when I say to you that I was raised and I always had a vaguely warm attitude towards these matters. And I still reel slightly, the inner child still reels slightly from the revelations like the ones that we see today. I don't want to believe that the police are rotten to the core. I will now be texted by plenty of people who have long known that the police are rotten to the core and have all the receipts to prove it. And I'm not arguing with you today. I'm just telling you honestly where I come from when I approach a story like this. And I come from Kidderminster in the 1970s. And I only really ever interacted with the police when I'd done something wrong as a teenager. 6 minutes after 10 is the time. I remember one little moment in Shepherd's Bush not long after moving to London when I made the mistake of heading into that part of West London on a match day. And I'd never seen this before. You don't have armed police at Kidderminster Harriers unless it's a very rare adventure into the latter stages of the FA Cup. But you barely see a police officer at Kidderminster Harriers if you go to the football there. But I obviously was on the environs of Queen's Park Rangers ground, and there were a lot of police around. I don't know whether Leeds were visiting or it was a particularly potentially hairy tie, but there were a lot of police around, and I'd had that attitude. So I'd be about 19 years old. I'd always had that attitude going up where the police were your friends, so you'd smile at them or something like that. But obviously if they're on duty on a match day, they're in a completely different place. The lizard brain has kicked in. The head is spinning around like Action Man's eagle eyes. They're not interested in some spotty student in a caftan giving them a little wave and trying to smile at. So I was struck by the hostility that I sensed emanating from the police who were policing a football match on match day. But I still have this idea of bad apples, not an actual corrupt force. And the more I think about it, in fact, the more I'm speaking out loud now to you, the more silly I'm feeling, because there's so much evidence on the way to the report that's been published this morning that shouldn't surprise us. We shouldn't be shocked. The Charing Cross Police Station report came out, about a year ago? Appalling exchanges going on between officers there. I mean, really, really grim stuff. Most men will have a friend or will have a group of friends who engage in, quotes, banter, end quotes, that would shock their own wives and girlfriends, right? As you get older, I think most of us move away from that. We possibly either change our ways or we change our friendship groups. So I was always stunned to see that actual police officers would do jokes about rape, would do vile comments about female colleagues, really, really grim stuff, secure in the knowledge that everybody else would go along with it. I'm always fascinated by that psychologically. It's the same with grooming gangs. We can all accept the existence of one pervert, but that pervert's confidence that when he shares his plans or his behavior with someone else, they'll not only be relaxed about it or approving, but they'll want to join in. That's the bit that, and this is probably where I sound most naive, I don't know. So you've got one copper who's a scumbag, but he knows that he can send these messages to half a dozen other coppers and that they will join in or laugh. And again, I'm always fascinated by how many of them are doing so while wincing and cringing and clenching and actually hate it as much as you would or I would, but they feel they've got to go along with it because it's the canteen culture, as they used to call it. So there is all sorts of different competing thoughts and feelings in my mind when I turn my attention and yours to a front page story today. The Times covers it particularly well. Criminals and sexual predators join the police. And this is not bad apple territory. This is cultural. Few words more ridiculous and wrong in recent years than people, very silly people talking about woke policing, whether it's Suella Braverman or a Rent-A-Gob Daily Mail columnist, pretending to believe that because a police officer chooses to do the lambada at the Notting Hill Carnival or doesn't hit a Just Stop Oil protester over the head with her truncheon, that somehow this is evidence, or dares to wear a multicoloured helmet on Pride Day, that this is somehow evidence of something rotten in the heart of the force. Think about that. There is genuine evidence today published of something truly rotten in the heart of the force. They've found applicants with convictions for robbery, convictions for indecent exposure, convictions for domestic abuse. They found a recruit who was a pimp, others who've lied about their family's involvement in serious crime, including drug dealing, applicants who were living with other family members who were involved in criminal gangs. You've got the predatory officers, you've got lax vetting, you've got the inspector who's reviewed the Met and 7 other forces concluding that there could be thousands of people in these categories, people who should never have been allowed near the force. You think immediately of PC Wayne Couzens, the murderer, of course, of Sarah Everard. He was a firearms officer, now serving a whole life sentence. The stories are legion, and we'll no doubt pick up on some of them in the course of this morning. But the idea that the British media stroke political establishment has spent most of the last year trying to get us excited about, quotes, woke policing, end quotes, when right under our noses an absolutely virulent cancer has been working its way through most police services in this country, is yet more evidence of just how profoundly we are let down by conservative politicians and right-wing commentators and journalists. I just think back, when's the last time you heard someone pretending to be outraged by woke policing? It was probably this week, was it? Last week? Suella Braverman, I think, used it as another distraction from her own egregious conduct. And I don't know why, I don't know whether it works, but the idea, oh no, we don't talk about the Charing Cross report because that's just some bad apples. What we really need to talk about is that bloke wearing a multicoloured helmet on Gay Pride Day, because that's real evidence of how rotten the entire police force is. So I'm going to open up the phone lines, and I want police people, past or present, mostly if you can, this is going to sound awful, I do find sometimes, don't hate me, all right? Don't hate me. You ready? I do find sometimes that people long retired can, on occasion, hijack these sort of conversations and lead them into largely unhelpful territory. I'm sometimes very, very grateful for the perspective of the ex-copper, but in the context of what is going on now and how rancid this is, I don't really want to hear about how it all went wrong when they started giving graduates a fast-track promotion into the officer class. All right? I'm sorry. I know things were better in your day. Put your trousers on, son, you're nicked. They weren't better in your... But if we can possibly steer clear of that, I will be eternally grateful to you. 13 minutes after 10 is the time. So why and how has this happened? We zone in, right, on applicants who would be known to be dodgy. So there's one here who, they knew that he had a conviction overseas for robbery, or it would have been very easy to find out. They knew that these people had convictions for indecent exposure, domestic abuse. Now, I accept the need for redemption in society. Goodness knows, I was raised a Catholic. It's a crucial part of our faith. But I also worry that it's the people who are protecting and guarding us are clearly unfit for purpose. So I'll take whatever answer you've got, okay? Political, social, personal, whatever it may be. Police officers, past and present, can tell me, how the hell has this happened? It's not a question I ask very often, certainly not with the second H word, but I'm asking it today. How the hell has this happened? And think about what it means, particularly for women. Think about what it means. The people that are supposed to be protecting you, making you feel safe. It's an absolutely horrible story. I don't want to get bogged down in the emotional reaction to it. I'm interested also in the social reality of what it actually means. And that's where the second question comes in. 0345 60973 is the number you need. The second question is this. Having had dealings with the police, which I haven't really. I mean, it's pathetic, my interaction with the police as a member of the public. We got burgled 14 years ago or something like that. That was probably the last. I have to speak to them sometimes about some of the viler communications that come into the office or come into the studio, the death threats and what have you. Very occasionally we have to speak to the police about that, but they've always been absolutely exemplary in those sort of contexts. So in like street policing or day-to-day policing or crimes that have actually been committed, when you need to approach police, when you need to deal with the police, I'm interested in how unsurprised you are by these revelations. I'm interested in your response to the news that hundreds, if not thousands, of corrupt officers were working in England and Wales. I'll read that phrase again. Hundreds, if not thousands, of corrupt officers are working in England and Wales, and they want you to get cross about someone doing the lambada at the Notting Hill Carnival. They make me very, very angry sometimes, those people, because they lie and lie and lie again and spare not a second to think about the consequences of their lies. Corrupt police officers up and down the country, and yet the media and political attention in recent years has been directed at so-called woke policing. It's pathetic, truly pathetic. But here we are, looking at the reality of hundreds, if not thousands. And when I tell you about the culture of misogyny and predatory behaviour, I want you to tell me what has happened to you in your dealings with the police that makes you less surprised, less shocked than me by these revelations. Okay? So there's two ways into this. Number one, from the inside, tell us how it's happened. And I hate to break this to you, but I'm going to have to treat you with a modicum of skepticism, because if this was going on in my workplace, I would know about it and I would have tried to do something about it. So maybe that's an unfair accusation, but the scale of these problems is such that they almost render everybody complicit. Silence becomes violence. Talk me through it. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And then the second question is, given your own interaction, your own dealings with the police, how surprised are you by reports that hundreds, if not thousands, of corrupt officers are working in England and Wales? The threshold for recruitment is far too low. And secondly, the culture of misogyny and predatory behaviour that has been unearthed. It's 18 minutes after 10. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. 21 minutes after 10. And, of course, the story that perhaps was most illustrative of a broader problem would be the story of Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman, the two sisters who were murdered, and then whose family suffered the inexplicable indignity of learning that two Metropolitan Police officers had photographed their bodies for their own amusement and then shared them with colleagues, two WhatsApp groups. One, and I can't repeat, I mean, I know I should, but I'm not going to. Some of the stuff that they were involved in, I'm not going to repeat the words on the radio. But two groups, one containing 41 police officers. That's the bit that's cultural. That's what cultural means. So they've done this disgusting thing that I still can't get my head around. And then they have posted these photographs. They've shown them to their mates, secure in the knowledge, or at least believing, because presumably one or two would have blown the whistle on this, but secure in the knowledge, believing that this would be greeted with glee, greeted with joy. Two black women murdered, and it compromised the case. The defence suggested that these officers might have actually polluted the crime scene. It was cited. Thankfully, it came to nothing, but it was a potential contribution to the defence case. So how and why is this happening, and how surprised are you, given your interactions with the police? Anne's in Chorley. Anne, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello.
Yeah, retired police inspector, been retired 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. That's fine. I'm not being funny, but if you'd retired 25 years ago, I'm not sure how useful you would be to this conversation. But 5 years is bang on the money.
That's fine.
Bang on the money.
Obviously did me 30 years service, very proud of everything I've done. And just, my personal experience, I have witnessed misogyny, sexism, and a few years ago, as an inspector, I called out some very inappropriate comments by a senior officer, dating back. He was trying to glorify sexual assaults on female probationers, basically. So I called it out, and I have to say I was just so disappointed with the investigation, with other officers that clammed up, but suddenly from confirming the issues to me, so, when a senior officer investigated, clammed up and said that they had no recollection, and HR were shocking. And I was trying to do the right thing in calling out this behaviour, because I just found it absolutely toxic. And, I ended up feeling like a pariah.
You were hung out to dry.
Yeah, and the issue is, for me, you've got this sort of unwritten code amongst thieves that you don't grasp. And I felt the same in the police service, that having called something out that was highly toxic, inappropriate, I didn't have the support. Now, I knew in my heart of hearts I had to do the right thing, because that was just wrong on every front. But until you get something in the police service that protects whistleblowers properly, to me, there was no evidence. Anybody watching me and what I went through, and I had to go for counselling after, because I was made to feel like a pariah, having come out and challenged inappropriate behaviour. I was left high and dry, and officers that would normally, have a laugh and a joke.
You were truly shocked by this, weren't you? Absolutely shaken to your core.
Yes, absolutely.
I can hear it even now. I can hear it even now in your voice, Anne. Yeah,
because you just feel, why did I do that? Why did I put my head above the parapet? Well, I know why I did, because I was outraged.
But why didn't anybody help you? What answers have you come up with for that last question?
I think there's just this, without sounding cynical, a self-interest, that if they do come out and it's a senior officer, what are the prospects for being backed for promotion? What are their prospects for further progression in a different department? And that was the only thing I could come out with. And it's like...
So if I have a reputation for causing problems...
Yes,
it will hold me back.
Troublemaker,
I actually avoided the phrase troublemaker deliberately, or causing trouble, because problems rather than trouble, isn't it? Because doing the right thing shouldn't really be filed under trouble, but it is, and that's the problem.
It shouldn't, and this is the problem. And like I say, when the one department that I thought would give me a true sense of backing was the HR, Human Resources Department, and I can't begin to describe, of all the things, it was that. The person I dealt with, the way she looked at me, and I think she just put me in the box of, you're a troublemaker, you can't
this is
prove
the bit that this is what you lose. This is where we get left behind the rest of us, because if someone listening to this was a victim of sexual assault, they would go to the police. And you are concerned, obviously and correctly, that they might end up talking to someone who thinks it's funny because he's making jokes about it at work and glorifying it. And so from the outside, it makes no sense that they would not be, ushering you into the inner sanctum and saying, right, we need to get to the bottom of this immediately. We can't have someone on the front desk, I'm speaking metaphorically, we can't have someone on the front desk tomorrow when a sexual assault victim comes in. We can't have someone on the front desk who thinks it's funny.
Well, this is it, and it's the signalling, James, that he was a higher ranking officer than myself, and it's the signalling that went off to other members, and there were support staff, female members, all this, laughing and joking, and I just thought, this is unacceptable on every possible level. And as you say, he's dragging performance in crime and sexual assaults. Well, where's his credibility?
And then you provide the first answer to the question of how this threshold has become so low, how this bar has become so low. Because if he's involved, or somebody like him is involved in the recruitment process, then some of the stuff that is popping up on some of these CVs is not going to sound alarm bells in his head in the way that it would in yours.
No, this is exactly it. And until you get a proper, where the pariah becomes the person who does it, rather than the person who whistleblows, I can't see you can ever progress. And that's the first time I've ever raised an issue. And like I say, I'm not a person, I've never felt the need in the past to whistleblow, because I haven't. Everything I've experienced, in all honesty, has been very low level.
Right.
Not that it's right, James.
No, I understand. Yes, I understand.
Very low level. I felt confident to challenge because it was peers. I set a standard for my staff as to what was acceptable, what was not. I walked the walk that I talked, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course it does. But you presume throughout that there is a system in place that you can activate. There's like a button you press and then certain things will happen, and none of them happened. And in your case, in fact, the polar opposite happened in some way. It did. And I think, like I say, anybody who witnessed what I went through, would they have confidence knowing that I ended up having to go for counselling, that, I was struggling to be believed, James? That was the problem. It was like, and like I say, unless you get this mindset of, you're considered a grass for calling out inappropriate, sexual comments and glorifying indecent assaults. You're the wrong one.
I'm the wrong one. and it was like, and it was nothing, nobody said anything directly, but, like I said, some very good colleagues at the time distanced themselves, and you just got that where you walked into a room and their eyes immediately went down on the desk.
I feel for you. I really do feel for you, and it knocks the gloss off some of your years of service. I hope you can focus on all the good that you did.
Yeah, and it was just the whole experience where you're doing the right thing, you're calling something out that's inappropriate, you want support, and you end up feeling a little bit isolated. And this is the problem, because unless that, senior officers have a zero tolerance, and zero tolerance has to be that, James.
Yeah.
You can't have this. Oh,
Well, that was the phrase I was thinking of when you started talking about low level. I started thinking about, and it turns out to be a bit mythologized, that whole thing about graffiti in New York and zero tolerance policing. And if you deal with the broken windows, then actually you also bring down the figures of serious crime. But in the context of a culture, that's the whole point. Cultures inculcate, they move up, they percolate upwards. You start off with a comment that goes unremarked, unpunished, and then it becomes a behavior, then it becomes an action rather than a word. And thank you. You've made me a little late for the news, but I'm sure everybody listening understands why. So there is the beginning of the answer to the question. 10:32 is the time. Lottie Morley is here now with your headlines. So there's several questions bubbling away, aren't there? I mean, how does this happen? To which the answer is going to include huge cuts to the police service, low pay, and therefore low appetite for joining. But forces have accepted applicants. They've accepted applicants with convictions for robbery, indecent exposure, and domestic abuse. Listen, we're all different, aren't we? I'm more troubled by the indecent exposure and domestic abuse than I am by the robbery element of this, unless it was violent or armed, because it's about the things that you can do, that you're capable of doing, you know. And if you're capable of stealing, I suspect you're more capable of seeing the error of your ways than you are if you're capable of beating your partner or indecently assaulting someone. But I don't think any of these people should be allowed to join the police force. That speaks of desperation. Perhaps someone will bring that up. So we've got to sign up these scumbags, James, because otherwise the seats would be empty. The roles would be unfilled. But the more I think about it, the more outraged I am at people who keep talking about woke policing as if that's a major problem when police forces across England and Wales are signing up people with long histories of predatory behaviour, with links to organised crime, with convictions for robbery, indecent exposure and domestic abuse. One recruit was a pimp. Others were caught lying about their family's involvement in serious crime, up to and including drug dealing. But hey-ho, there's a copper over there who wears a multicoloured helmet once a year on Pride Day. That's the real problem. Good grief. You'd think they'd done enough harm, these people. But no, on they go. Aisha's in Middlesex. Aisha, what would you like to say?
Hi, good afternoon, James.
Hello.
Thank you for having me on board.
You're very welcome.
So I'm calling for two reasons, really. First is to kind of share my experience of the police, not direct experience as such, indirect. My sister works for the police and has done for the last 25 years.
Okay.
And there have been many occasions where I've heard from her where she's confided in me and spoken to me about some of the indecent language and inappropriate sexual behaviour from other police officers. Now, most of that behaviour has been from male police officers, but actually, surprisingly, we don't hear it very often and it's not spoken about, but also females as well, where other colleagues will laugh and, you know, giggle and smile according to what other police officers' comments that they've made.
It's a desire to fit in, isn't it? I mean, you have to, if hope's the right word, or believe or think that these women are inwardly cringing or inwardly wincing, but if what Anne described to us up in Chorley is normal, then you'd almost have to laugh along with it. You'd almost have to go along with it, because not to do so marks you out as trouble, marks you out as a problem.
As an outsider, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the reason why they get involved in the comments. And really, she had such a bad experience that she spoke to HR, she spoke to top management, and nothing was done about it. Yeah. It was, as you know, your previous caller said, she was made to feel as if she was the problem, and that's where the issue arose. And she just didn't get anywhere, so she had to move. She moved to an internal job, right. Much happier now. But the fact that every time we go past the area where she worked, those memories come back to her. They come and haunt her, and it's been a very bad experience. And I'm sure other police officers may go through the same experience that she has, but I just don't think it's spoken about as much as it should be to try and rectify and resolve that problem. No,
well, it can't be, can it? This is the problem. It's listening to Anne and listening to you. It creates an almost unbreakable seal, doesn't it? Because if you blow the whistle, you end up in trouble, you end up in bother, you end up being the one that everyone turns quiet when you walk into the canteen, not the person you've blown the whistle on. And if you don't go along with it, then again, you're going to worry not just about the daily experience of your job, as in wanting it to be as easy as possible and not wanting to become the target of the so-called banter, and you would become the target of it, you'd be called frigid, or you'd be called a lesbian, or you'd get that kind of comment.
Yeah.
So the motivation to stay silent is much greater than the motivation to do the right thing, and that's human. I'm defending some of these women, not simply describing them. It takes guts to do what Anne did, and
Sure.
there's nothing wrong with not having those guts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
And the second point I wanted to make was that recently I had confrontation with a neighbour who was exposing indecent sexual behaviour towards my children when they're playing in the garden. I contacted the police and I actually spoke to them about my concerns.
Yes.
And to my surprise and my disappointment, in fact, as well, I received a letter after 4 weeks to say there just wasn't enough evidence for them to take this matter further. Now, I don't know whether they contacted the neighbour, whether they had carried out an investigation, but the letter clearly stated there just weren't enough funds for them to pursue the matter further. And that really caused disappointment and heartache to me that, it just wasn't taken further.
No, and there's going to be millions of stories like that up and down the coast, thousands of stories like that up and down the country where it is probably a valid explanation. We simply haven't got the bodies to look into something that is objectively low level. It's not low level for you, but the slightly lazy argument about if the police officers were doing that, hiding in a hedge in your garden trying to catch the neighbour doing something wrong, then what would be going on over the road, or what would be going on elsewhere in town? That's the problem with trying to spread the force too thinly, which of course brings us back to austerity and cuts, which the Conservatives did 12 years in power. It's as if it never happened, but that is a large part. Shortage of officers is a large part of what's going on here. We haven't been to Idiot's Corner for a while, have we? Should we play a quick visit to Idiot's Corner? It's unsigned, unfortunately. Here's an idiot. They are coppers, not nursery nurses. What kind of person do you expect wants to be a copper? Power hungry, rough and ready, not pearl clutching librarians. Big deal. I'll answer your question in good faith. What kind of person do you expect wants to be a copper? And I'd say, well, ideally, not a pimp or actually. Tony's pointed out robbery involves violence. If there wasn't any violence or threat of violence present, then it would be theft. So not a violent robber, mate. I don't know. I mean, can I explain this? Do I need to use words of one syllable? Oh, whoops, I just said syllable. The kind of person that you would be someone that wants to look after the public. Somebody that, I might sound naive, but the idea that there's something wrong with suggesting that these people shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a police force makes you today's first inhabitant of Idiot's Corner. Paul is in Enfield. Paul, what would you like to say?
How you doing, James? You okay?
Hello, Paul.
I'm just I just rung up just to have the debate with what's going on. My dad was Ian Tomlinson, who was killed during the G20 protest.
Yes.
And and
but by a police officer, we should stress, for people not familiar with the story.
Yeah, by
on
a police
duty.
officer. And that was, his name was Simon Harwood. And going back to the vetting procedures of things, it wasn't until after the trial the public was allowed to know that Simon Harwood had 10 accounts of misconduct within policing, jumping from force to force without being sacked, and going through his disciplinary hearings. And that resulted in my dad losing his life during the G20 riots. And, there's nothing to do with it. It just gets my back up. We got promised back then, over 13 years ago, that this was going to be getting washed out of the police force. They're not going to have these type of people in there. And 13 years down the line, I'm still driving along and I'm hearing this type of stuff going on. It just makes me, shake with anger. It's just absolutely ridiculous. When are they going to get hold of this?
Yeah, I mean, I can't quite get my head around that. You remember the stories, Paul, and they come along almost as regularly as clockwork, and they speak of an absence of desire even to address these issues. The history, as you say, 10 complaints in 12 years. I mean, for the record, 9 of them had been dismissed or unproven, but the one that was upheld involved unlawful access to the police national computer. I mean...
That was, yeah. When are we going to get hold of this? There's going to be plenty of more people dying in the hands of the police or rogue officers in the police force. And as you mentioned earlier, it isn't just that one bad apple. it seems to be as the brand, as the Metropolitan Police, you know.
Yes.
You know,
how do you feel? How does the family deal with with days like today? I mean, it brings it all back, I presume, and it also.
A lot of my family has switched off, James. Not switched off, but tried to put it behind them.
Yeah.
And it's just it's never left my head. On a daily basis, I'm reminded of, or reminded of my dad and of how everything happened. And it just I have something to say on every time. Every time you have something going on, I really want to ring in, but I really stop myself. But today, I just had to call in, you know. Because
you would have thought at the time that Simon Harwood, who, again, for absolute clarity, your dad was found to have been unlawfully killed by an inquest jury, but Harwood was prosecuted for manslaughter and found not guilty of manslaughter. He was dismissed from the police service for gross misconduct, but Ian was categorically found to have been unlawfully killed after being struck by Simon Harwood during those protests, which he wasn't even part of, was he? He was a newspaper vendor. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So did you go down the bad apple route to start with, Paul? Did you think that this fella is a one-off?
Well, listen, we were completely innocent family, never been exposed to anything like this. And going in to have to fight the justice system of the police, you know, we felt so alone with, you know, it was us against them, you know, even back then. So when they transferred it to the IPCC a few weeks later, we was like, well, they're police officers. And then just little things unravelled, and it just never got anywhere in the beginning, you know. It was... his name just flew out my head, Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer, you know, I was sitting at the meetings with him at the time, and he dismissed it in the first beginning and said there was not enough evidence. It wasn't until we got the unlawful killing, went back to the table, and we thought we was going to, you know, get justice for our dad, because that's all we ever wanted.
Of course.
And, you know, how many commissioners have we gone through since then? I think it's been 3, isn't it? 2 or 3?
Might be more than that, I'm not sure.
I think, so...
Mate, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Days like today bring it all back in the way that it does, and I'm sorry that you look at this and think nothing's changed since the day my dad died.
Yeah, I don't want you to be sorry, James. I'll thank you for these type of phone-ins, because it shows that we still ain't going to forget about it, you know, and it gives me the opportunity to call in and hear my voice after 13 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does do that, but I wish it wasn't a voice that needed to be heard, because that would mean you hadn't been through what you'd been through. Paul, look after yourself. Oh, boy. And I mean, there it is, you know. We mentioned Nicole Smallman and Bieber Henry. We didn't mention Ian Tomlinson, going back to, again, a police officer whose record would suggest to, I don't know, most people watching shouldn't necessarily have been in uniform or shouldn't necessarily have still been in the force. And yet there it is. It's 10:49. 10:52 is the time. This is a horrible story. Remind us with every call, really, of the personal impact of what can sometimes get filed away as headlines. Criminals and sexual predators join police. His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services reporting this morning that hundreds, if not thousands, of corrupt officers were working in England and Wales. But remember, it's woke policing that you're supposed to be upset and cross about. Funny, isn't it? 10:53 is the time. Michael's in Birmingham. Michael, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. I wanted to share some experiences from a police career that was 12 years that finished 2 years ago. I must say on good terms.
Okay.
And for a personal choice. I think the first thing to remember is that there are a lot of police officers serving at the moment will be reading these headlines and they will be absolutely appalled.
Right. But you see, you say that, mate, and I'm not going to have a fight with you.
No.
But I mean, at what point do we have to acknowledge that you might be appalled to see it in the papers, but you can't be appalled to learn that it was happening because it's been happening so much and so widely? So as I was saying to the lady I spoke to before I came on, from my experience, say, joining the force 12, a particular force 12 years ago, it is apparent that at that time, and it probably will, it does still exist. Right.
I described it as almost being a lads' club.
Yeah.
In parts, so you walk into that.
But when Donald Trump boasted about sexually assaulting women, some people tried to defend it as locker room talk, didn't they?
Yeah, that sort of thing. So there's this culture, and it's a lads' club. So if you don't look a particular way. You don't go in the gym. You don't lift the weights, for example.
Right.
You may not fit in, and you're potentially ostracised. And the language, the locker room talk that you describe goes on. And, if you're not joining in with it or you don't find it funny, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with her? And then you, as one of your previous, I think the retired inspector said, you go to raise that issue, you almost find yourself ostracised and not trusted.
And what do how do the numbers break down, Michael? Because it's an appalling frame of reference, but I'm just thinking about school bullies, for example. And if you've got 30 kids and you've got one bully with a couple of henchmen, they exert enormously disproportionate power because, say, 10 kids will go along with the bullies for fear of not being bullied next, as it were. 10 kids will try and stay out of it altogether, and 10 kids will be on the receiving end of the bullying. So they actually end up, even though there's only 2 or 3 of them, they end up exerting power over the whole group. Does it work a bit like that?
Almost like a clique, if you like.
Yeah.
So there's your clear leaders, your alphas, if you want to call it that. I
don't like this language because they're the opposite of alphas, aren't they? Really, they're pathetic cowards, but they're bullies. Yeah. They display. They try and come across like the big I am, like Billy Big Bananas.
Context.
Yes,
within that context, then you get the people who stick to them. Yes. And then you may have, my other point was that towards the end of my service, I worked in a learning and development unit, which is basically new recruits that come in.
Right.
And you do the work required on the job and to say if they are appropriate to be sent to a shift, to a section, to then work alongside these colleagues that we talk about. And they will come to you and you try to instill within them the professionalism that is required. And what you expect of them while they're with you for that short time, which is usually around 10 weeks, could be shorter than that. You then bump into them so many months down the line when they've been on the shift.
Yeah.
And you find that there's been an attitude shift.
Already.
So it's changed, and you look at your colleague who may have spent time with this new recruit, and you sort of shake your head and think, well,
they've been groomed almost. They've been Because I think Sheila took a call from a woman, I think it was Sheila, whose son had joined, and she described how within months he'd completely changed and he was displaying all sorts of unpleasant attitudes to all sorts of issues. That's what you're talking about. You'd have somebody, and you'll do well with them for the 10 weeks, and you'll form this working bond with somebody because you spend that much time with them over a 10-week period. And you have high hopes for them, and you send them off into the big bad world to see what it's really like, and you might interact with them later down the line, and you think there's been an attitude change here. This wasn't the person that came in fresh-faced. We've all seen that in other contexts, haven't we? But I'm surprised it happens so quickly. And so whether it's a question of fitting in or getting ahead, this is what institutional or cultural means, isn't it? It's literally to slot into the machine. You have to become part of the machine. And if the machine is toxic, you have to become outwardly toxic. Whatever's going on inside, we never know.
It's the police culture, isn't it? Is what it's referred to as.
Did it get worse over the course of your 12 years? Stay the same or get better?
I would say it was worse at the start.
Okay, well that's mildly encouraging, isn't it?
Mildly, only because of towards the end of my career, I took a different path into a slightly specialised role. Yes. So you sort of become detached from the lads' club as it would be referred to or could be referred to.
Right.
But then my other point was I know you mentioned previously in this talk of the quality of the recruit that comes through and at Tory cuts. How can we attract the best people or the most suitable people to these roles and to this job? It is a difficult job at the best of times when you would compare it against graduate jobs, for example, and it is could be described as a pittance, for what you expect from somebody. I mean, as a PC, a 12 years experience, day in, day out, working hard, doing the best for the people, that I serve under difficult circumstances, and behaving professionally and in the manner that would be expected. Thinking I have to put the harm I have to put myself in or potential, and you look at your pay packet. I know it's it's maybe a crude thing to say, but you look at that paper and go, is it worth it?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely that. And it isn't, is the short answer. So then who does then sort of come through the system? Candidates you probably wouldn't want.
And as you mentioned before, is it just a case of getting bums on seats, boots on the ground?
Yeah.
Come on, doors are open. Let's, I know for a fact that in my last force that, they have entrance exams and assessments, pass rates were continually dropped and dropped and dropped.
Otherwise, they wouldn't get enough people over the line. Michael,
Exactly.
mate, you're taking me right up to the news. Thank you for that. I mean, important conversations, illuminating conversations, but not, I don't think, uplifting. It is 3 minutes after 11, and I mean, indulge me, if you will. I just checked how many people in the UK are on Twitter. The problem is, of course, that you don't know whether that's 19 million accounts registered in the UK or whether it's 19 actual individuals who are on Twitter. The new Robert Galbraith book, the pseudonym that J.K. Rowling uses to write the Cormoran Strike novels, it's all about trolling. It's a remarkable book, actually. I absolutely inhaled it. It's 1,000 pages long, and I must have done about 150 pages a day because I read it in around about a week. But it posits the possibility, without any spoilers, that an awful lot of what passes for so-called trolling on Twitter will actually involve one individual controlling many accounts. So you just don't know, do you? And then, of course, we hear about bot farms and troll farms. Been a big uptick in racists on my feed lately, which is remarkable, really, given that I've blocked thousands already. But accounts set up in September or October of 2022 that are very much delighted by Suella Braverman's comments about refugees and sundry other sort of provocations. So I don't know. And that was part of the reason why Elon Musk tried to pull out of buying Twitter, wasn't it? Is that he couldn't really be persuaded of the relationship between fake accounts and real accounts. But his attempts to pull out of buying Twitter failed, and he ended up paying $44 billion for it. And the reason I checked how many people are on it is because we're going to talk about it for a bit now. PMQ's on the way at 12. Actually, I'll be joined by Lewis Goodall because Theo Usherwood is taking the waters in a well-known spa town. I don't know what he's doing, actually, but he's off this week. And so Lewis will talk us through PMQs this week. Before that, I thought we'd have a look at this. Because 19.0, I mean, that was October of last year. So a year ago, there were over 19 million users on Twitter. Goodness knows how many of them are real or how many there are now. But it's clearly important. And if you're about to send me a message saying, I can't believe you're talking about this, I'm not even on Twitter, it really matters. I mean, whether it should or not is a question for the ages. But you now have news stories written about what people in the public eye have tweeted, even and opinion columns written about what people in the public eye have tweeted. Even your humble correspondent has seen the contents of his tweets picked over by the Daily Mail, among others. Emily Maitlis once got into trouble when she still worked at the BBC because she'd liked one of my tweets. It's the standard journalism over at Dacre Towers now, is that if you like a tweet, that's outright, and then, of course, they moan about it all the time, because it actually lets people who aren't towing the line or tugging the forelock or doffing the cap towards fairly toxic editorial policies, it does somehow afford people the chance to achieve quite a big platform. So A, it matters, and B, I quite like it. Those are the starting points on this. And, of course, it just made Lottie's bulletin, didn't it? You just heard it. It's headline news now that people are going to start getting charged $8 a month to have a blue tick. So I have a blue tick, and it's remarkable how many people don't know what that means. It's actually a white tick on a blue background, unless you're in dark mode. One for the pedants there. I just want to know, I think the question I'm going to ask you is whether or not you think this is going to work, or whether you think Elon Musk has made a massive mistake. I'm very much leaning towards the second conclusion, and what that will mean for Twitter as a whole, God only knows. I mean, if can't, some of the banks that have helped him raise the money to buy it are talking about parking their debt for a while. In other words, they don't think they're going to be able to pass it on to anybody else, which is generally how these things work. I read one very clever thread. There's a great online magazine called The Verge, which is worth reading for some of the coverage. But I read another thread by a fellow that used to run Reddit, who was explaining that the attitude to free speech of these tech bros, as I think they're sometimes called, or Silicon Valley billionaires, of Elon Musk's generation, is very much that of 10, 15, even 20 years ago. So when you sort of had the evangelical right trying to shut down pornography or trying to censor video games or trying to, the online equivalent of burning books, the argument was that Elon Musk's support for so-called free speech comes from that era, when he would have actually been opposed to some of the stuff that he now seems to think needs to be highlighted. I don't know. I don't know anything. Nobody does. Even on this occasion, Elon Musk, who has demonstrated genius in some areas, but dropped some fairly almighty clangers in others. But it's a big part of my life. It's my favourite online activity. It overtook playing video games years ago. And it's part of my job as well. I use it both to find out what people are talking about and, of course, to talk myself, to entertain the masses. I've felt for some time that the people who are very popular on Twitter, if there is money sloshing around, I felt for some time that they should get paid. Who knows? I've got 1 million odd followers. Once you hit 1 million, you don't know until you hit 1.1 million how many followers you've got. You know, the numbers don't go up in smaller increments. But of 1 million followers, how many people would pay, say, £1 a year to continue following someone like me? Because you only need 10% of people, and you've got 100 grand a year for £1 a year coming in. You know, what if it was 50p a year? Maybe 500,000 people would do it, and you'd have £250,000 cut. So I don't know why. It's just lazy, idle thinking over the last couple of years. That I wonder if the future of Twitter is going to have to involve paying the people that are drawing a lot of the attention. And of course, the oddest thing about that is an awful lot of Twitter attention involves people who are in the public eye, or people who are above the parapet, or people who've got a blue tick, drawing negative attention. I mean, a big part of the business model on Twitter is having a pop at people that you don't like, or trying to pick fights or argue about or with people that you don't like. So the commodification of it fascinates me, always has. And then you have some people warning or worrying or celebrating that Elon Musk's ownership is going to bring back people like Donald Trump. It's going to bring back blatant liars whose unsubstantiated opinions are offered up as valid responses to observable facts. So Trump, I think, was banned, wasn't he, was it the incitement of the riot on January the 6th in the final analysis, I think, or the actual lies about the election? You shouldn't really be allowed to lie about an election, I don't think, in the public space. But there's all sorts of worries about that. And then the use of the N-word went up exponentially in the days after Elon Musk taught it. So a certain type of racist was celebrating Elon Musk's purchase. Even the Daily Mail at one point wrote an article about how all the lefties were up in arms and losing followers because Elon Musk had announced his intention to buy Twitter. I think I mentioned to you at the time that the idea of my Twitter account being worthy of national news for the Mail Online was just laughable. But there it was, alongside various other examples of the great and the good in this country. So, and then we have the people who don't know what I'm talking about. So you know roughly what Twitter is, but a blue tick is something that people in the public eye, people of note. I mean, every phrase you use sounds Alan Partridgey. Celebrities, famous people. I don't know what it is, but they decide whose accounts are worth verifying. So I suppose people reach an arbitrary threshold above which it seems reasonable to suspect that others might pretend to be them. That seems to me to be the criteria for a blue tick. There was a period, I think, when you could apply, but most of us just woke up one morning and found it on our account. So a point at which it is reasonable to suppose that somebody else with ill intention might pretend to be you. So that's why it's called verification. It's a verified account. The major advantage of having a verified account, and you might not know this if you haven't got one, is that you get an extra feed on your mentions. So you have all and you have mentions on yours, right? So you can see everyone who's mentioned you, your name, your handle, whether they've liked something that you've done, whether they've retweeted it, whether they've replied to it, whether they've quote tweeted it. You see that on your ads. But next to that, so all mentions, you then have verified. So you press verified. I thought everyone who had a tick knew this, but people like Sheila Fogarty and Matthew Pinsent are now messaging me saying, what's all this about? I didn't know anything about the verified. So, but you click on verified and then you only see your interactions with other people who are verified. And I find that quite fun because I'm still a lad from Kidderminster who can't quite believe people I used to watch on the telly or people I used to watch playing sport are interacting with me on this mad app. I make no apology for that. I'm still Jimmy from the block. 13 minutes after 11 is the time. I don't know what my question is, really. I will do. The point is, there's two questions here. Is anyone going to pay for a blue tick? I think that's a bit niche. 0345 6060970. I know it's niche. I just said it's niche. Why are you saying it's niche in my ear? It's niche. It's niche. I said this is niche. Oh, this is a bit niche. About the thing I just described as niche. But that's the question I'm interested in because I don't think I would. Why would I? 03456. That's very niche. Why would I pay for a blue tick? 0345 6060973. This programme's in danger of disappearing up its own backside at the moment, I think. Not for the first time I hear you shout, but possibly it's the closest we've ever come. Should I pay for a blue tick on Twitter? 0345 6060973. But the real question is, looking at it, knowing what you know, and you possibly understand more about these issues than I do, has he made an almighty mistake? Has Elon Musk dropped the mother of all clangers? I think he has. I mean, I watch what he says about stuff, and I think he's making it up as he's going along. At one point, he said he was going to charge $20, didn't he? And Stephen King replied. Stephen King, guys, you see what I mean about blue? So Stephen King replies and goes, well, I'm out of here. And Stephen King, to use the language of the zeitgeist, he knows quite a lot about content creation. Stephen King. He is an enormously prolific and creative author. Hollywood, TV shows, obviously books, all the rest of it. So when he says, I'm not doing it, I'm not paying. I mean, do you leave Twitter altogether or do you just stay on there as an unverified account? I don't know. I don't know. The point is, I don't think Elon Musk knows either. And given that he's got a reputation for being a genius, that makes this situation all the more surprising. So, 0345 6060973 is the number you need. If you want to talk about blue ticks, or more pertinently, my own blue tick, you can. But I grant you, it's a slightly... is recondite the right word? It's a slightly rarefied area of conversation. The bigger question is, has he completely muffed up? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. And yeah, we are. We're having a conversation about Twitter. Why? Well, it's massive news internationally. Millions and millions of people in this country are on it. And if Elon Musk has dropped a clanger of the magnitude that I am beginning to suspect, then it's going to make quite a big difference to the British media and British politics. The government announces things on Twitter. The first time, most stories now break on Twitter. The idea of being able to sit on something until you've got tomorrow's front page done and dusted is disappearing over the horizon. Stories break on Twitter. Stories start on Twitter. An ill-advised tweet from a major celebrity will be massive news. So it is interesting, and I'm not going to accept any sniping from people moaning about the fact that it's not. If you're not on there, I'm doing my best to help you understand it, all right? Or but the argument that it doesn't matter is pointless. I think I can agree with you that far too much attention has been paid to Matt Hancock's decision to go on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. It led the 6 o'clock news on the BBC last night, which took me back slightly. But the argument that this doesn't matter is simply not true. It is an absolutely immense engine of news and commentary, of politics and showbiz. It's silly to argue that it doesn't matter. And because it matters so much, the question of whether or not Elon Musk has made an epic error in buying it becomes an important question. And I'd like you to answer it now by dialing 0345 6060 973. 21 minutes after 11 is the time, and we're talking about Twitter. That's all. There you go. That's my intro. I could have probably spared you 20 minutes of radio. We're talking about, what do you reckon? What's going on? What do you make of it all? Sam's in Cardiff. Sam, what do you want to say?
Hi there, James.
Hello, Sam.
I just wanted to say, I think you're right in as much as Elon's got this completely wrong.
Hang on a minute. I mean, he might be listening. I just want to stress, I'm just thinking out loud. He may have got it completely right, but from where I'm sitting, he's making it up as he goes along.
Well, I don't agree with you on that part, but in respect of he's got it wrong, what I think he's trying to do is move the goalpost to commercialise Twitter a lot more.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that monetize off Twitter, not directly from Twitter, but with paid partnerships. And people with a certain number of followers, 1-2 million, one tweet from them can, earn them thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds in revenue.
Really?
Yeah. So
how do you get a piece of that sweet action?
I don't know how many followers exactly you've got, James.
Over a million.
A few more.
Over a million.
But I mean, if you know the power of Twitter, if you tweet something.
Hang on a minute, back up. I've got over 1 million followers. How do I start making money out of it?
Well, by promoting paid partnerships and that sort of thing.
How do I get in touch with these people I could have a paid partnership with?
Well, I'm guessing they'd probably get in touch with you if their products fitted with what
well,
you
let me
wanted.
just stay there, Sam. Don't go away. I'll give you plenty of time to talk. Anybody interested in employing one of Britain's best loved broadcasters with over 1 million followers on Twitter and a proven track record of selling books and board games, I am. You can DM me at Mr. James OB. Just let me know what is going on and what sort of moolah we're talking about, because my kids need shoes. Carry on, Sam.
So I think he's trying to move the platform towards that. And it's not just the people with, a lot of followers. Small businesses, if they want to set up, if they've got to pay 10, 20 or even $100 a month in order to be verified, and they are...
But he's not talking about that at the moment, is he? He's talking about $8 a month for people who've currently got a blue tick.
Yes, but I suspect that will then lead into...
With respect, I don't want you to suspect. I want you to talk about what we actually know, because there's no point. I mean, it's confusing enough before we start talking about stuff you think might happen at some unspecified point in the future. Well, this £8 for everyone with a blue tick idea, $8 for everyone with a blue tick, what do you think of that?
Well, again, I think it's, there is power and value in having a Twitter account, and he's trying to monetize off that, which...
But he won't raise... He'll raise buttons, won't he, in the great scheme of things? Even if everyone who's currently got a blue tick started paying $8 a month, it's not going to touch the sides of Twitter's revenues.
Well, it's a new revenue stream. If you've got a business, you're always looking for additional revenue.
And so why would I pay it, me personally?
Well, as you said before, you're at risk of being impersonated by someone else, if not.
But there's nothing to stop them. I mean, there's someone called Simon Young has just called himself Elon Musk on a blue ticked account. So it's only the app bit. Anyone can pay $8 and call themselves James O'Brien. How do I verify myself by paying $8?
Well, because you're verifying the handle, not your name. I mean, people change.
But someone else has got James O'Brien as a handle. I've got Mr. James OB.
Yes, but are they verified?
No, but for $8, Sam, they will be. Come on, mate, keep up.
So, but have they got a blue tick?
No, but for $8, they will get one.
But you said that it was only the people that are currently verified that...
No, that's not... No, okay, sorry. All right. So maybe there is a distinction there, in which case all he's doing is monetising the people who are already verified. That is not what I think he's proposing. I think he's proposing that for $8 a month, anyone can get a tick.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that would then... My point about new businesses, other people that want to...
Yeah, but my point about me, which is, as you should know by now, by far my favourite subject, what possible reason would I have for paying $8 to prove that I am one of the many James O'Briens in the world?
Well, the fact that you are one of them, the fact that if you are promoting one of your products, your show, your books, that is showing that you are the legitimate person. So if you've got a link to, listen to a clip here, buy
but anyone can do
that.
Anyone can do that.
Well, yes, but the fact that you are the author of that book, that you are verified...
But I'm already the author of that book. I don't need a blue tick to prove it.
Well, you might not need one, but other people might need one in order to verify that it is you.
But why, though? Because if someone who's not me is promoting my book, that's great. I'm absolutely delighted about that. The more the merrier, as far as I'm... There's 100 people pretending to be James O'Brien, all flogging the Mystery Hour board game, just in time for Christmas, by the way. You can get it from mysteryhour.co.uk. Then why? I mean, I don't mind that. Why do I need to prove I'm the real one? Everyone's helping.
We're talking about it in a positive context, as in you're promoting your book. In a negative context, someone that might be saying things that you haven't said, to prove that it is you saying what you're saying. So if you were making,
but they can pay $8 and call themselves James O'Brien. How do they prove it's that James O'Brien? That's the bit that I'm confused by. I think you are as well. There's no embarrassment in that. I think we're both confused. And the point I was making at the outset is I think Elon Musk is as well.
Well, as I say, I think he's going for the low-hanging fruit of saying, if you want to keep your tick, you can get this.
We need to clarify that, don't we? Is it if you want to keep your tick, or is it if you want to have a tick? I mean, will anyone be able to... Well, I mean, listen to me, Billy Big Bananas. Will any old Tom, Dick or Harry be able to get a blue tick? Or will it be the plebs joining in? I mean, you see my point, though. And I mean, certainly I read it, and I clearly gave Sam there the wrong impression. I very much read it as anyone can have a blue tick if they pay $8. Let's have a look. Oh, God, he's got 113 million followers. So everyone complaining, please continue complaining, but it will cost $8. I mean, what I haven't seen much of is here it is. So Twitter's current lords and peasants system for who has or... Is Sam still there? Sam, come back. I'm right. You're wrong.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, so Sam, Twitter's current lords and peasants system for who has or doesn't have a blue check mark is BS. Power to the people, blue for $8 a month. That means anyone can have it for $8 a month. So I get nothing.
Well, no, so actually it undermines...
Completely.
It undermines your position.
No, it undermines your position.
No, what I mean is it undermines the people that are already verified.
Yes.
However, it does allow people to be verified who don't currently meet the criteria.
Yeah, but anyone can call themselves... anyone can get a blue tick next to an account claiming to be James O'Brien.
Well, yes, but talking about other businesses...
That's disastrous.
Well, only for James O'Brien or people called James O'Brien.
Well, I mean, disastrous. It's immaterial in the great scheme of things, but there's no impetus whatsoever to me being one of the James O'Briens paying $8 to be James O'Brien on Twitter, is there? There's no point me paying it. Why would I pay it if anyone can pay it?
Well, no, exactly. But
so I just stick to my million followers. That's the proof that it's me.
Well, yes, but I mean, I'm
not sure what we're arguing about anymore, Sam. Are you?
No, I'm not at all arguing. But my point about businesses
I'm afraid you are.
Up,
Yes, no, I'm interested in it, but he hasn't said anything about them. So that's with respect, that's irrelevant. He's not said anything about businesses that are just starting up. We've put out a tweet now, so a clip saying, I think he's making it up as he's going along. James O'Brien says Elon Musk has dropped the mother of all clangers with his Twitter blue tick fee idea. So I'll probably have my blue tick taken away by the end of this programme. I think, thanks, Sam. Well done, mate. Nice one. There we go. It was good while it lasted, everybody. 29 minutes after 11 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Well, I am simply wondering whether Elon Musk might possibly have made a mistake after his long and glittering track record of entrepreneurial genius and acumen and his magnificent contribution. I mean, the man is a proper visionary when it comes to electric vehicles. Imagine starting a company from scratch and beating the BMWs and the Mercedes-Benzes and the Porsches and the Fords absolutely out of the blocks. I mean, he's clearly a genius in many, many ways. But I don't know that this is the best idea he's ever had. 11:30 is the time. Lottie Morley is here now with your headlines. It is 34 minutes after 11. Okay, listen, I probably don't get it. But I don't know that I don't get it. And if the chances are that if Elon Musk is doing something that I don't understand, the chances are the problem is mine, right? I mean, just given the man is practically a rocket scientist. So maybe there is a very clever plan here, although the fact that he climbed down from $20 to $8 pretty much in response to a tweet from Stephen King, who remains adamant that he would not be paying, it doesn't mean you're going to leave Twitter. I'm not going to pay $8 to prove that I've paid $8. What else does it prove apart from the fact that I've paid $8? At the moment, like it or lump it, a tick means, a verified account on Twitter means that there is a realistic chance of someone else trying to impersonate you. If you could pay for it, then you could just pay $8 to impersonate you. Companies, I mean, how much money are you going to raise from making Shell pay $8 a month to... I don't know what the plan is, but the more I think about it, the more I wonder that that's probably a mistake of my perception rather than of Elon Musk's conception. Leon is in Lincoln. Leon, what would you like to say?
I kind of agree with you, and I think a lot of Elon's decisions, right back to buying SpaceX and buying Tesla, They're not that of an innovator. He's not a genius. He's a rich kid that's managed to stumble across the right things at the right time.
Well, come on, Leon. There's a lot of rich kids out there, but they haven't stumbled across the
I wouldn't say that's because of his genius, though. It's really good marketing.
He's the richest man in the world. He's got to be good at something. And
he's a very good capitalist, I'll give you that. But he's not an inventor. He's not been in there coding stuff for Tesla or SpaceX. He's not going to be in the back of the scenes of Tesla helping to rewrite algorithms. He's very good at paying people and finding the best people. And he's very good at
that wins wars. You can build an empire by being good at that. I mean, anyway, let's not focus on his CV, because to be honest with you, I don't know that much about it. But what's going on at Twitter? Yeah,
I think with the Twitter situation, though, that is a reflection of how I view Elon. Is that he's not this great genius and innovator. Did you know that your name is an anagram of his name?
Is it?
Leon.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, have you only just noticed that?
Yes, I've never really thought about it.
There you go. It was just that I know the way you talked about him on first name terms. I was wondering whether he was on first name terms with you, and then I realised that you actually have the same first name. It's got all the right letters, but not necessarily in the right order.
No, we're definitely not on first name terms.
Okay, so go on. What do you think is going on at Twitter?
I think, the blue tick situation is exactly like he's treated other situations when he's bought other companies, and that's going to be to take something that other people have built, something that's incredible and has really been a push. So Twitter in itself, I think that is the innovation. SpaceX, as the company before he owned it, was innovative, and the same for Tesla. And they have continued to be.
And actually, I misspoke earlier. He didn't start Tesla from scratch, did he? I think somebody else did, and he came in a bit later. Is that right?
I mean, to be fair, though, he did get in on it very early, and at a point when most people weren't predicting electric cars, and he has taken on the big companies. Yeah. But again, I think that's more down to a marketing thing.
So what's the plan at Twitter? Do you understand it?
The plan at Twitter is basically, now all the hard work's been done, he knows that he's got this captive audience in people like you who are going to talk about it. You're at the moment marketing for him. He's just bought the biggest thing that anybody has ever spent money on in history. He's bought something for 40-odd billion. He has got to recoup that money. And the $8 a month...
How's he going to? $8 a month isn't going to touch the sides.
The $8 isn't what's going to recoup that money.
What is?
The fact that every TV station and every radio station and every celebrity...
Well, they're not. I don't think they... I mean, they might be, but we very nearly didn't do it. It's only because we talked about Matt Hancock yesterday that we're talking about this today. I mean, I very nearly didn't do it as a topic, but the business pages are going to be agog, aren't they? And it was in Lottie's bulletin. So you think the $8 thing is a simple marketing exercise and has nothing to do with the business plan?
Oh, I think there's probably something in there, but it would be remiss to think that Elon hasn't taken it as a way to strike two birds with the same stone.
Okay. I mean, it's
a good way to gauge public reaction. You know, you can see what's going on, what people are actually thinking. If it's bad, you can roll it back. I mean, he's already shown us a negotiation with Stephen King.
Yes.
So it's hardly like it's a firmed out plan. And that is another thing that we'll see more of Elon now that he's under a bigger spotlight, is that a lot of this stuff, he's like, before he was overly famous, on Twitter, he was trolling people constantly.
Was he?
It was just a big joke to him. And